C9 Rewind is a retrospective series in which I, Foreign, the esports historian, take you on a journey back through time to some of the greatest and most beloved players and lineups in the history of the Cloud9 organisation. The focus of this rewind is the 2015 CSGO roster and their summer run. When Cloud9 acquired Complexity's CSGO lineup in 2014, they were taking on a team that had been in the playoffs of the past two majors, reaching top 4 in a surprise run at the first, and was a competent international squad. They had not, though, truly challenged for titles. Over the following almost 2-year span, Cloud9 would field some lineups that were legitimately bordering on elite status during their peaks of form, and scored a number of memorable upsets and deep finishes. This is the story of the much beloved Summer of Tank Tops, when NA fans could hold their heads up high as the best team from their region took it to Europe's finest. 2015 was an ominous year for North American Counter-Strike. The two cores that had made the region competitive appeared to be crumbling to nothing. The iBuyPower lineup was indefinitely banned early in the year, a move which was doubly devastating. It not only took one of the most skilled lineups off the board, but also prevented Hiko, arguably the best NA player to that point in time, from quickly establishing a strong team after his departure from Cloud9. Prior to then, there had been 3 NA lineups in CSGO that had shown Europe's best they could compete with them and give them a serious test. Quantic had been a mix of future iBuyPower and Cloud9 names, but unable to hold together despite some impressive results and upsets on the way out. The breakup of that team had doubled NA's chances though, as iBuyPower came together with a vision of high individual skill and a looser style of play, and Hiko and Semphis formed what would become the Cloud9 core with more of a European balance of tactics supplied by Sean Gares and a mixture of roles. With their differing strengths, the two cores yielded results of a different nature. iBuyPower were famed for being strong domestically, even beating top European teams and winning events on American soil, while Cloud9 were the international darlings, always able to give the elite team a solid challenge, even if they were often eliminated in the quarterfinals. Now, only Cloud9 remained and they were depleted. Hiko, their legacy best player, had departed the team, and replacement Shazam had issues in his first tournaments and was soon replaced. While underdogs rose up, like the future core of Team Liquid and CLG, they were still far from the level the previous top NA sides had established. The iBuyPower bans would yield one positive though, as it freed up star sniper Skadoodle. Clearly one of the best NA talents, his strengths required a good in-game leader to unlock. Thankfully, he found his way to Cloud9 and Sean Gares' watch. Despite pairing young star talent Shroud, a phenomenal aimer and growing streamer, and Skadoodle, the new-look Cloud9 lineup looked troubled at the outset. Remaining players Sean Gares and Nothing had also brought in the formerly retired Freakazoid to replace former mainstay Semphis. This new lineup was blowing everyone away online in North America, but suffered a number of tough losses at the first European LANs they attended. At Gfinity Masters Spring 2, the last competition of this slump, C9 had finished in last place, though they had played 2 of the game's best in Envious and Virtus.pro. Just when expectations were starting to wane, the team would come together at their next event in an instant and showcase spectacular form no NA side had yet displayed. The month rolled over into July, and the summer was well and truly underway. Wearing their now famed light blue tank tops, Cloud9 headed to Germany for the first ESL ESEA Pro League season finals. Featuring arguably the 4 best European teams, few considered Cloud9 a threat, but they would have something to say about that. Opening the tournament with a cash upset over Envy sent them into a winners match against VP. The lads were unable to complete a mini revenge tour of the teams that had beaten them at Gfinity, and a loss to the Poles meant a rematch with Envy, this time in a full best of 3 series. Many wrote off the best of 1 win as a fluke upset, with Envy known to start tournaments slow before heating up, and so a full best of 3 was the perfect format to cement the legitimacy of that win, and C9 would not fail to deliver.
Peek window now. Close door. Nice!
Sweeping the major winning lineup on 2 of the French team's favourite maps sent a strong message that C9 were not here simply to participate. Freakazoid, still an unknown quantity for many fans, proved an X-factor with a big fragging performance against one of the most skill-stacked lineups in the game at that time. As much of a surprise as C9's run to the playoffs had been, they were greeted by the unusual gift of finding CLG as their semi-finals opponents. The NA side had managed an upset over a European team of their own, and then beaten the Brazilians of Luminosity, as that team had also upset an elite EU side. C9, with far superior experience on their side overall, dominated the series and moved into their first big final on European soil, the first for any NA team in the game's 3-year history. Trouble was that the team on the other side of the stage was Fnatic, the best team in the world, and eventually to establish themselves as history's best for a time. Fnatic were the reigning major champions, featured Olofmeister, hailed as the game's best individual player, and had a daunting map pool depth. That the final would be a best of 5 made the stakes seem impossible for NA's new hope. The opening map immediately reaffirmed C9's ability to beat Europe's best teams, as Sean Gares called a clutch cobblestone victory of 16-14, the slimmest of winning margins. With that being Fnatic's map pick, suddenly a series many had written off as obvious in its outcome was threatened. Fnatic would return the favour and showcase their dominant potential as they steamrolled C9's pick of Cash in map 2 on the back of Olofmeister's greatness. C9 managed to defy the odds and make the overpass map close, but lost their own heartbreak 30-round affair 14-16. Dust 2 would be the ultimate soul-crushing affair for NA's best.
One more
Spawn, cap load.
Spawn.
As C9 led with a strong 10-5 first half and would eventually reach map point at 15-9 before disaster struck.
One more, boys.
One more.
As they had done and would do to so many teams, Fnatic refused to be put away without incident and marched back into the game, forced overtime, and then won the trophy in the extra session. In the context of their recent form and starting circumstances, finishing in second place ahead of giants like Envy, VP and Team Solo Mid was already an amazing performance, but C9 knew they'd had a real chance to make history and take all the marbles. They'd played 3 maps closely with the Swedish Dons, and Shroud looked reinvented as a star, posting a +20 differential for the series and hitting a monstrous 100 kills over the 4 maps played, beating out even Olofmeister's 93 kills. As ever, a single event performance, no matter how impressive, was written off as a one-off or a fluke, and fans of the European teams expected little chance of a repeat. C9 wouldn't need to wait long to prove otherwise, as mere days later they were in Montreal for the Electronic Sports World Cup.
Hello.
With the event lacking Fnatic, TSM and Virtus.pro, the field was a lot more open than Pro League. Still, teams like Envy, Ninjas in Pyjamas and Nartus Vincere were all considered strong teams and favourites for the title over Shroud and company. C9 topped their group, taking a little light-hearted revenge over Hiko as he stood in for the Ukrainian team Flipside with future teammate Simple. In the quarterfinals, Team Liquid fell into, but not uncontested. Nitro and Elysia's team were still acclimatising to international play. The semi-finals looked almost scripted, as C9's opponent would be the very same Envy that they had gone 3-0 against in Germany. Those hoping for a bounce-back series from the French were sorely disappointed, as C9 made it 5-0 in their last 5 maps against Shocks and Happy's boys. The result was so devastating, it helped trigger the second French shuffle and change Envy's lineup radically. Having reached back-to-back international finals, C9 unsurprisingly again found themselves contesting one of Europe's top teams to decide who would lift the trophy. This time around, the final was a best of 3 though, and thus would not require the same stamina and map depth to potentially complete the upset. Na'Vi were a side gradually improving as the year had gone on and came into ESWC in the best average level of form anyone had seen from them. Their star player was Slovakian AWP legend Guardian, then considered the best sniper in the game, and the matchup was an AWP fan's dream, as Skadoodle himself was staking a claim to be the best with the big green. Na'Vi opened strong with a dominant win on their map pick of Inferno, and Guardian heavily won the first battle against Scar. C9 were on the ropes on their pick of Dust 2 in the first half, but put on a clinic of CT side dominance on the traditionally T-sided map and against a disciplined, grind-out CIS squad to steal a 16-14 win and push the series to a deciding map. Much as at Pro League, the last map of the series would be another thriller, but again, C9 would not be the ones on the right end of the score. A tight 16-14 overpass game went Na'Vi's way, and C9 were once again left with a very good tournament placing, but a gut-wrenching feeling of what if. There was no time to mourn the loss or ponder hypotheticals though, as the packed schedule continued, and a few days later the team had flown to Valencia, Spain for the Face It Stage 2 finals. The strongest field C9 had yet faced, with 5 of Europe's best, Fnatic, TSM, NIP, VP and Na'Vi, would begin the event in the way of a potential C9 dream run. Indeed, placed into a group featuring Na'Vi and VP, odds were C9 would not be featuring in their third playoff bracket in a row. With a revenge 16-14 win over Na'Vi on Cobblestone, a map they had not played in the Montreal final, C9 would escape the group to again secure a top 4 finish at a minimum. If victory over Na'Vi, albeit on a single map, brought a little relief, then the next match would help salve the wounds of previous final losses, as C9 were, unbeknownst to them, about to score the most epic victory of their run. Their semi-finals opponents were Fnatic. The Swedes had not been in attendance at ESWC, and so their last playoff series had been the EPL Finals win over Sean Gayers and the boys. On the back of a big Skadoodle performance, Orping being the only area C9 seemingly had an edge, the NA side took Fnatic's pick of Mirage in the opener. The semi-recent rework of Train was C9's pick and a map Fnatic played rarely. Shroud tagged in to again show himself to be the Fnatic killer, dropping 37 kills in a 21-19 overtime win.
But 2 more. They are starting to defuse the bomb here using the grenades. He doesn't have a clean angle here, and they are playing this perfectly. Olivox, there's nothing he can do, and Cloud9 do it! They defeat Fnatic 2-0. They're going to the grand finals against TSM. Who would have called this? Who would have believed this?
C9 had not just reached their 3rd straight international final, but this time had taken down the best team in the world in a sweep no less to do so. Their finals opponent would be a different elite European side for the 3rd straight event. This time it was the Danes of TSM. Having had their own epic 3-event run earlier in the year, winning 3 titles, the future Astralis core were in a small slump before this event, finishing in last place at the aforementioned EPL event which sparked C9's run. At this event, they had been a powerhouse, more reminiscent of their earlier wins though, beating the likes of Fnatic in the group stage and the ESWC champions Na'Vi in the semi-finals. Buoyed up by their historic win over Fnatic, C9 hoped the cliche of 3rd time's the charm would prove apt. Alas, TSM would defeat them in 2 and force them to accept the metaphorical silver medal for the 3rd straight event. The opener was a 14-16 loss on Cloud9's pick of Cash, and TSM closed the deal with a monster Mirage victory as young superstar Device continued to come into his own. C9 would remain relevant up until the next major in Cologne, but their window to win had come and gone, and they would not reach another big final offline that year. The summer run had been closed with failure to make the playoffs at the major, though memories of their wins over European top teams echo to this day, as does the image of those light blue tank tops. Working to the Sean Gayers formula, C9 had again formed a lineup of players fitting their roles and capable of making the team stronger than their individual parts. Freakazoid and Sean Gayers were low fraggers, but the former proved a loyal soldier and entry fragger able to pump up the team's morale, and the latter a crafty and cerebral caller with one last big run left in the tank. Nothing operated as the experienced veteran, filling what was needed to connect the role players to the stars. Often, it would be his firepower that would put C9 over the top to secure the win against top international competition. Those stars, Shroud and Skadoodle, provided Cloud9 with a star rifler and AWPer, further contributing to the team's balance, and the young fraggers balled out over that summer to an extent typically reserved for only the best European stars. C9 would later go on to win significant trophies and cause major upsets, but with largely different players. And while this lineup of summer 2015 was not the height of the organisation's success in Counter-Strike, it established much of the expectations that a top North American team could achieve great feats and is justifiably a happy memory for many fans of the organisation.